Welcome in to the 411 on Wrestling podcast. This is our new special retro review episode of the podcast. We're going to be doing this each and every Friday here on the 411 on Wrestling podcast. And I am going to welcome in here for the very first edition of our retro review series here on the podcast, our friend Andy Perez, who, as you know, is the host of Dissecting Dynamite, and Andy and I have done plenty of podcasts at this point. We've done a lot of Dissecting Dynamites, but Andy, this one, even for our first retro review here, going to feel a little different because, we wanted to start this new series, and the timing of it certainly coincides with the recent passing of Brodie Lee, a.k.a. Luke Harper, a.k.a. John Huber, who passed away unexpectedly at the age of 41, and we wanted to go ahead and decide that, hey, if we're going to look back at something this particular week, we want it to be based around him, and that's why we decided on a pretty incredible match, Andy, going all the way back to 2014, Elimination Chamber, The Shield versus the Wyatt Family.
Yeah, an amazing match to start off the new series with. I mean, I love going back and watching shows from this era because I was actually on a break from watching wrestling between like 2011 and 2015 or so, and obviously I've gone back and revisited all the shows since then, caught up. But revisiting these shows that I wasn't fully engaged with the wrestling world at the time, it's always really interesting and fun. And usually during these rewatches, I'm focusing on the Shield because it's hard not to with stars like or with future stars like Moxley, Reigns, Rollins in the mix. But on these rewatches over the past week, I was really reminded on how massive the Wyatt family was at this point.
Yeah, they were, and as we'll mention at the end of the podcast, you and I will have actually, by the time this we're recording this before actually the AEW Dynamite tribute to Brodie Lee on Wednesday. So, and you and I will be talking about that on Dissecting Dynamite. So by the time you listen to this podcast, this will already be up. The Dissecting Dynamite will be up on YouTube. So we will put that in the link here that you can go back and check out our thoughts on that show. And certainly we'll both have a lot of thoughts on our reaction to Brodie Lee's unexpected passing and just the tribute show in general and our favorite memories we went over on Dissecting Dynamite. So you can go back and check that out, and we'll mostly talk more about kind of our favorite memories of him throughout this episode, but we also did it quite a bit on that Dissecting Dynamite episode, so you can check that out as well. But let's jump into this match, and some of the stuff we do here on the Retro Review series, we'll do full shows for the most part, but we wanted to single out just this match because it is one very memorable. If you look at Brodie Lee, and a lot of people use Cage Match and such, you look at all the different ratings, this is still the highest rated match of his that he will have had on Cage Match. If you look at just the overall ratings from people on there, got a 9.31, 235 votes on that. Again, everything's subjective. You can decide what the best matches were. He had a lot of good ones, but this is the one that sort of takes the cake for a lot of people. Dave Meltzer gave this one 4.25 stars. I think a lot of people have always said they felt like that was too low, and they in fact had another match that we'll talk about here in a bit between these two teams that happened just 8 days later. But we'll get to that here in a bit. But this was the Wyatt Family versus the Shield, Elimination Chamber 2014, February 23rd, 2014, at the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Andy, the first thing that stood out to me about this match, my goodness, the crowd. Like, I thought about that as I was rewatching this, and I was like, I still, to this point, I don't think can completely grasp how much different it is now. We're sitting here talking at the end of 2020, how surreal it's been not to have a crowd in attendance, and then you go back and rewatch some of this stuff, and it's like, it's almost become like the norm now for us not to see a complete crowd in a full arena. But when you go back and watch something like this, it just magnifies it even more.
And that's the thing. The crowd here is just irreplaceable. Like right, even before the bell, the crowd with the "This is awesome" chant, "This is awesome, this is awesome," and then during the face-off between the two teams, or between the two factions rather, you have the dueling chants for the Wyatts and then for the Shield. I mean, the crowd is just electric here, and for good reason. I mean, both of these factions are at a crucial point in their careers. I mean, in the build up to this, you start seeing some more cracks in the Shield, some disagreement between Roman and Dean actually, and then And then in the rematch that followed this, I believe that was the match where actually Seth walked out on the Shield,
Yep.
wasn't it? But yeah, but then leading up to this match, we see that Seth is the glue holding them together, and then as we know, the Architect would end up splitting up the Shield just a little while later with a couple of chair shots. But both the Wyatts and the Shield would split up in the coming months following this match. But at this point, both of these factions were arguably the hottest they had ever been.
Yeah, no, they were at the top of their game, both of them, and that's what made this match so special. You mentioned it. That was kind of the theme going into this match, was they were building up sort of the cracks in the chemistry of the Shield. You didn't really necessarily see that play out a ton in this match, but I think you could still kind of sense heading into it. That's what a lot of people were thinking was, okay, maybe what's the next step? And of course, we eventually saw what the next step was. As you said, that match they had 8 days later, which a lot of people loved as well. They, you could compare the two. I still think this one's better than the one that they had on Raw that next week. But still, you had Seth walk out, and it made for an interesting dynamic because you could kind of continue to see things growing, and then based on the Wyatts winning this particular match at Elimination Chamber, it just set up a lot of different scenarios, and that's how we saw things play out. But that was something too. We talk about the crowd. I mean, how many matches, which, we could probably find them when you have like the main event matches, of course. The one everyone's always going to point to, I think, is The Rock versus Hogan at WrestleMania 18. Like before the match even starts, you've just got the people that are just losing their minds. They're insane. But like this was insane the way that you said it. I mean, they're having dueling chants of let's go Wyatts, let's go Shield. This is awesome before the match even starts. And then the match does start, and it's like, this is what I always point out, Andy, when I talk about some of this stuff. I think back to that, I don't remember which WrestleMania it was, but it was like the Triple H and Orton match where going into it, like it was an absolute blood feud where those two were just, I think they had all the stuff with Stephanie, and it was like, you thought these two were just going to completely rip each other apart as soon as the bell rang, but it never happened, and you felt disappointed by it, but like, you thought these two teams were going to really just go at it immediately, and my God, they did, because as soon as the bell rang, like these two just unleashed like holy hell on each other, and I thought that was just a great open to this match.
Right, exactly. Not only was it death and destruction, you had great character work right off the bat too. We had Dean pacing around like a lunatic. We had Bray over there playing the mind games like the master manipulator he is, just inciting Dean. Like I said, the dueling chants, the let's go Wyatt, the let's go Shield, and then right after the stare off, we have Dean jumping the gun, just attacking the Wyatts. So right off the bat, we have some clearly defined characters, and when you think about it, both of these teams were just 2 years into their WWE main roster run.
Yeah.
So to have these clearly defined characters in such a short amount of time, and really tent poling this Elimination Chamber card back in 2014, amazing stuff.
Well, let's talk about Brodie Lee for a second. Of course, I'll probably just keep calling him Brodie Lee, even though we know he was Luke Harper in this match. But just the recency and just kind of that's what we've come to know him as, talking about AEW and all that. But I watched this match, and there were so many different things that stand out, and it's stuff we pointed out throughout his entire career that we could tell. And you always heard people mention, this guy just such a unique skill set for a big man in wrestling. And, we always drew the parallels to Bruiser Brody. And I think you saw some of those mannerisms here from him in this match. It was just, he had that monster-like character, but at the same time, like he could wrestle like a lot of different styles. Like he just wasn't your big man that's going around chopping guys, and just picking up people and doing body slams. That was never more evident than in this match, because throughout this match, you had him hit that massive drop kick that he had on Moxley, which again, I'm going to call him Moxley Ambrose. I'll probably differ throughout this, but I think, it was fun to watch those two interact, but my goodness, like Brodie Lee's offense, when he does a drop kick like that, he did the suicide dive, and then there's this incredible sequence in this match, which I forgot about this until I went back and watched it, but you have the sequence where he goes up top, and he goes for a German suplex on Seth Rollins, but Seth Rollins reverses it, lands on his feet, clotheslines Brodie Lee over the top, and then hits a suicide dive to the floor. That was just, the crowd lost their minds during that sequence, but that's what I mean with this guy. You look back at his career, and the fact that, he was able to do some of the stuff that he did, that's why I think people will always remember him as like, he was not your just traditional big man. Like, he was of another breed. He had all those things he could do as just this monster type character, monster heel, but at the same time, like, he had the skill set of a very, very talented all around wrestler. I think that's what made him just a really, really special talent.
Yeah, just an extremely unique performer all around. And yeah, like you said, JBL and Cole were on commentary remarking, as many have, comparing Luke Harper to Bruiser Brody, to Stan Hansen. And then Harper's offense, like you said, always entertaining. The uppercuts, the big boots, the discus clotheslines, an amazing looking black hole slam. And because of his size, whenever he did do stuff like a drop kick or even like just a vertical suplex or a suicide dive, it always looked super impressive. I mean, he always showed how massive and dominant and how scary he could be, but pairing that with an element of agility that you don't usually see with men of his size. And then flash forward to 6 years later, I mean, just this year, and that's the predominant style of wrestling that we see today, particularly in AEW. And he's hanging with guys like Cody, guys like Frankie Kazarian, Moxley, Omega, Page, and he's up there putting top tier performances. You don't see a performer like Brodie Lee, like Luke Harper very often. That's what something like that is what makes this loss so difficult to take as a fan of the industry.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just something like you said, this match was just a perfect example of all the different things he could do. Even just his offense, and just there were a couple points in the match where, him and Moxley, or again, Ambrose, they're facing off, and then you've got, him taunting Roman Reigns. And I thought it was interesting to look at Roman Reigns during this as well, because man, it's like 6 years ago is not that long ago, but it feels like in WWE terms like it's been forever, because Roman Reigns, such a different character at this point. I mean, you had the crowd, like, they were so into Roman Reigns, and like, we think about how quickly that turned whenever, it did. I mean, like, just think about how quickly things turned on that once the Shield broke up. And then, the crowd sort of realized that the WWE had decided, that Reigns was kind of that next John Cena. And I think from there, the crowd felt like, fans felt like they weren't the ones deciding this, and it was almost like, it was out of their hands. And I think that's where you had a lot of the changes in opinions towards Roman Reigns. But it was interesting to watch him here in this match as well, because, you had some of the members of the crowd like chanting for Roman Reigns, and you had him kind of playing up as sort of this alpha dog of this group, and people loved that. And I think that was one of the things that, until they had this recent heel turn with Roman Reigns, that's what everybody had been calling for. They wanted to see that side where this guy just comes out, he's not on the microphone, he's not trying to do this or that, he's just out trying to pretty much kick people's asses. And I think that's exactly what you got in this match from him.
That's the thing, and the framework was there. I mean, there's a reason that WWE went with him and pushed for him so hard. I mean, he looks like a star even back in 2014. But yeah, it's really interesting to see like how he was working then, or even how Bray was working with this iteration of the character versus how he works now as the Fiend. But yeah, and even seeing the other members of the Shield, how they kind of like embody these, I guess, like mercenary roles. Roman with just focusing on the strikes, Dean's kind of like dirtiness, and we kind of see that carry over to what he's doing now as John Moxley, and then Seth's like tactical roles and stuff that he uses to get around the ring. Just the way that they embody these versions of the characters is very interesting to see at this point in their career. Do you have a preference? I mean, looking at the work that Bray is doing here, between this version of Bray versus some of the amazing stuff that he's been doing as the Fiend the past year or so.
I still think, and watching it back, I still think that at the height of the normal, regular sort of Bray Wyatt character, and of course he wasn't normal or regular in any way, but like just that normal iteration of it, I still think that's the best that he's done. And I think there were so many situations there. I remember, so many people have brought it up. What was that? I don't remember the year exactly. Maybe it was 2015 or something, where he lost all those pay-per-view matches in a row. and it's like he was never put in a position to win the big one. I think there were so many different times, especially during this, like even in this match in 2014, like you could tell like this guy was on another level than so many other people. And of course, we know, a month later, basically here, he faces John Cena at WrestleMania. But it's just like they never it felt like he was never in that position to be, the guy overall. Like he may be been one of the guys and all of that, but I just felt like his character was so different. At the height of just that beginning sort of iteration of it, I thought that was the absolute best that he's done. And again, even for someone who's liked the stuff he's done at The Fiend, although I think, there have certainly been some starts and stops with that. I remember back to, Hell in a Cell with Rollins and all that. Like, I felt like that was a point where that character, even though he's done a good job kind of bringing it back and doing a lot of different things, that was a point where you felt like, oh boy, like this is a big, big step in the wrong direction. But I just felt like with the normal sort of Bray Wyatt character, it was so different and it is so unique. And I think when he had this group around him, with Harper and Rowan, and even, when Strowman was there as well, it just felt like this is sort of that I don't want to call it a peak because that's not saying it in a bad sense, but like this felt like the very top of his game. And I just, again, watching this back, you could just tell, like all of his mannerisms, all the things that he did, just an absolutely brilliant character. And I wish it was one of those situations where maybe he wouldn't have been put in a position where they kind of put him behind the eight ball or didn't give him that chance to really get that huge, huge breakthrough win in some of those situations where he thought he should have.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more, and especially like leading after this match, obviously the Wyatts walk out on top and an amazing showing for both them and the Shield. But this led, like you said, to Bray facing off against Cena at WrestleMania. And then Harper and Rowan, they went off into their feud with the Usos, also resulted in some amazing matches. Probably one of my favorite matches with Brodie Lee around this period was Harper and Rowan versus the Usos, and I think it was at Battleground. They had a 2 out of 3 falls match,
Yes.
but that was amazing. But then soon after that, Bray releasing Harper and Rowan, setting them free. It's a lot of me thinking, oh, what could have been, what should have been during this period. And even though I'm happy that we got to see what Harper can do on his own, his stuff with Dolph Ziggler, stuff with the Intercontinental title, things of that nature, I still feel like this win here at Elimination Chamber could have been so much more of a cannon, shooting the Wyatt faction into another stratosphere that I just don't think that they ever ended up achieving.
Yeah, it just and we know we've seen so many examples of that. I think of just kind of the start and stop type of scenario where we just see that so many times. And again, there's probably so many examples we could list throughout the years, just of guys being in that position. And really, even Luke Harper, Brodie Lee, like you could say that in terms of, WWE eventually put him in a position where, he had some singles chances and opportunities. And I think a lot of people remember kind of the feud he had with Randy Orton and such like that. But it's just, I think what really stood out to me in this particular match, and obviously we've seen it play out since that point, but like all 6 of these guys in this match, like they play such believable roles in terms of like you completely buy into all 6 of these guys. The 3 on the Shield side, like you completely buy into their characters at this time, even with, as we said, it's kind of playing up some of the dissension for them heading into the match. On the other side, like the Wyatt family, like these are just 3 completely nuts. Like they are just crazy. And I think that's something too where, we can talk about the in-ring wrestling, like the technical skill and all this other stuff, but I think it's so hard, and sometimes maybe we don't give enough value to the guys who can just play up some of these characters the way that they can, other than just guys who want to win matches and, do win a championship or something. Like, there's always that element behind it, I think, that adds that extra something. And you just had that in this match with all 6 of these guys, and I think that's why the Shield and the Wyatt family got to the height that they did, was because these were 2 factions where you knew immediately what was at stake. You knew immediately kind of what they were fighting for. And I think having that clearly defined sort of story and kind of clearly defined roles for all 6 of these guys, that's what made these 2 groups special. And of course, as we said, we saw that play out here specifically just in this match alone.
Most definitely. And I think maybe even more important than the ring work, maybe even more important than the character work, was just that it felt legitimate. I mean, you see some taglines for matches today, like I mean, the first one that pops into my head is Backlash, like the best match of all time or the greatest match of all time, whatever that was. But here, this match was built on who is the dominant faction in the WWE. And at this time, you had the Shield, you had the Wyatts, and there really was no other question. Of course, you have Evolution having to come back to contend the Shield a little bit after WrestleMania and whatnot, but still, who is the dominant faction in the WWE? And at this time, you could tell by the crowd's reaction even before the match even started. People wanted to see it. People were eager to see the outcome of this match.
They were, and it's just so many different instances. Like I said, we've kind of talked about just the overall scope of these two factions overall, but I really do think this was a match that sort of defined it. There was something else as I was watching this. I thought back on, Jerry Lawler was one of the ones that sent a tweet out after Brodie Lee had passed away, and his tweet said, the thing I remember about Luke was how respectful he was. On several occasions, he destroyed our announce table, but when he was done, my phone was untouched, my notes and run sheets undisturbed, and my monitor intact. Then he would look back and give me a wink. I thought that was great because, of course, in this match, you had a spot where it wasn't the English commentary team; it was the Spanish announce table, which, as we know over the years, is just taking a beating. But I was thinking about that after they, Harper and Rowan, they chokeslam Seth Rollins through the announce table as Bray Wyatt was over there just watching with his sadistic smile, and I was thinking, I wonder if Luke Harper went back after that and just kind of cleaned up the announce table there, because I thought that was such a great memory. And so many memories, as we know, have come in about just how universally loved this guy was. But I thought that was kind of funny to look back on and think about that.
Yeah, and this is actually one of my favorite announce table spots in recent years. I mean, it's so simple, but Harper and Rowan just elevating Rollins up with that choke slam. I mean, these guys are massive, and Rollins just goes flying almost to the point where when he's coming back down, it seems like he's trying to find his footing before he takes the bump on his back, just because, oh my gosh, he must have been 12 feet up there, but the height, the elevation, followed by the shots and the celebration after, just leading into the spot where all the Wyatts surround Roman after they've picked apart the other two Shield members. Just iconic. Yeah, I mean, a tale of two great factions, but the end of it was that the unity of the Wyatt family just overcame the force of the Shield. I mean, Harper and Rowan looked dominant. Wyatt looked really calculative. I mean, they won the battle of supremacy, and going back and, like you said, reading all of the tweets reflecting on Brodie's career, reflecting on this body of work that he's left behind. I mean, just look at the great matches he's delivered this past year versus Moxley at Double or Nothing. Yep. Cody with the dog collar match, that crazy 12-person tag versus the Elite and FTR on Dynamite. I mean, we were finally in the midst of this solo run that we'd been hoping to see Brodie get a hold of for years. And for that to be cut short, for such a good man to be taken not only from the fans, not only from his AEW family, but like from his wife and kids. I mean, it really is. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. And you saw it, again, in this match, it was just, you could tell when he was in there, as we said, just the offense for a guy that big, and just the mannerisms, the character, like he had it all. And I think it was just one of those things where, until you actually kind of saw him get that chance, and of course, he was surrounded by the Dark Order in AEW, but, even just his presence, like, it was very unique. And, we talk about the Bruiser Brodie, connections and all that, but I mean, I don't know, like, it was just that this guy had a very unique, skill set, and that's what we talk about. He was just a very unique talent, and, it just was so interesting to go back and watch him, going up against Moxley, knowing the matches they would have years later in AEW, knowing that they would have that match at Double or Nothing, and then just to see all the different things he could do. I really do, and, I probably could go back and watch a lot of his other matches, and I'm probably going to watch more of them here over the next several weeks just to kind of, reflect back on them, but I really think this match in particular is one where, he had singles matches in WWE beyond this. He had plenty of great tag team matches. Of course, him and Rowan would go on to, be the Bludgeon Brothers, which I thought was one that had a lot more legs to it than what they were given. But there was also circumstances around that with Rowan's injury and such that didn't allow him to do that. But I just thought there were so many different aspects that this guy brought to the table. And this was just one of those matches where when you think back, I think on his career and really just these two groups in particular, you're always going to note that this match right here is one that I don't want to say that this was a match that made these six guys, because they were already, as we said, they were already had reached a level that was very, very high and a lot of people never reach. But I mean, just to see them kind of in this iteration in 2014 and kind of where all of these guys would go from there, pretty remarkable.
Right. And another thing I noticed during this is that I'm pretty sure Brodie Lee was 35 years old his entire life. I mean, because I'm looking at him here and I'm like, oh man, this guy could have popped up on Dynamite back in September and I wouldn't have blinked an eye. He looks he looks the same. All he did was switch out a sweaty tank top for a triple breasted suit. But yeah, he looked exactly the same. Just crazy, huh?
Yeah, there was another spot I think in this match, and I forgot who sent the tweet, but there was somebody. I can't remember. It's going to bug me. I'll probably have to go back and look for it. But someone had said, when he wore the tank tops that he had as Luke Harper, it was, he would get mad if someone ripped him. I don't remember who sent the tweet about that, but there was one point in this match where I think someone had him in the corner. I don't remember who it was. It may have been Roman. It may have been one of the other guys. But I started to see like they were grabbing at his shirt, and I was like, oh no, like please don't rip the shirt. Like I remember seeing the tweet about how he didn't like that. Like please don't rip the shirt. I don't know if it ever actually happened. I don't think it did, but I was thinking about that too. But it's just, it's so many memories like that. And, again, I say this all the time, but I hate that it takes something like this for people to share, all these different just great memories. But I know, that's kind of, human nature and sort of the way things are. And, but man, just to think back on all these different memories, and that's something too, I will tell you, Andy, and, again, this is not to take away from anything else. Obviously, any passing like this is just an absolute tragedy in these circumstances. But I don't know that I've ever, in this situation, seen a guy that has gotten so many like memories, so just universally loved. Like we use maybe that term sometimes, but like I have not seen one person come out and say like, oh, well, I had a problem with this guy, or you've never heard anything about Luke Harper, Brodie Lee, John Huber, to where it's like, okay, well, maybe, you rethink how you look at this guy. Everything is just like the nicest guy ever, great human being, loving husband, loving father, unbelievable performer. Like it just seems like you think about all the different connections he's had. Went from back, in Chikara to Dragon Gate to all these other places, WWE, AEW, of course. It's just like this guy has had so many opportunities over the years to impact other people's lives, and like he never took that for granted. Like it just seems like he had a story with everyone and he was always doing something. And again, that makes it even harder to know that we're watching this match from 6 years ago in 2014, sort of at a point where like you feel like he's just getting started. And even 6 years later, like it felt like he was just getting started again in AEW. And just to have that, the circumstances surrounding it and to have him pass away, it's just, like you said, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, from what it seems, the reactions that have spread across the wrestling world, it was a guy that did nothing but spread grace and joy wherever he went, and that was obviously reflected in the body of work that he's left behind. I mean, like the joy and the excitement is shown in these matches that we can go back and watch. And speaking of like when we're looking at this match at Elimination Chamber 2014, when we're talking about the best matches of Brodie Lee's career, where do you think this stacks up in the mix? Because I mean we've listed off quite a bit already, but what are you thinking? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean I would have to say there's no way I would put it outside my top 5, or honestly maybe even top 3, because I think about and it's hard, right? Because these guys wrestle so many matches, and I think because it's gotten to the point where we're so fortunate to have all the wrestling available to us that we have, to where, you could literally, 24 hours a day sit around and watch wrestling for the next 15 years, and you're never going to be able to catch up on everything, probably. It's just so much out there. But I do think this is one that I always think about, and that's why, I decided, I was like, look, this is a match, if we're going to talk about Brodie Lee, like, I feel like this is one of those matches. I thought about the match with Moxley at Double or Nothing, because I think that's one, too, that maybe didn't get enough credit. And, of course, as we say all the time, everything's subjective. Either you like it or don't. And it's your own, everyone has different styles that they enjoy. But I love that match. I thought it was really good. But, the other one that you mentioned with Harper and Rowan against the Usos and that 2 out of 3 falls, that was another one that immediately popped into my mind. There's just been so many throughout, I think, his career. And, that's even the thing, too, is, you think back, like, there's a lot of it that probably a lot of people didn't see. Like, the stuff with Chikara, as we said, like Dragon Gate, all those different, like, matches that he had with people that are in different companies now, and you think back, and you're like, oh, you didn't even realize that he had matches against some of these guys unless you sort of followed the trajectory of their careers. And so there's so much stuff out there, and as I said, that's why I think we are so fortunate to kind of live in this era where the internet is our best friend, to where we can go back and look up stuff that we had never had access to or never even thought about watching, and certainly have a chance to do that. And I have no doubt that there have been a lot of people that have certainly done that here over the past week or so.
Right. And it's a lot to reflect on, and it's a lot to look back on, too. I mean, if there's anything that I think contends with this match, it's probably, like you said, his match versus Moxley at Double or Nothing. I really enjoyed his feud with Cody Rhodes as well. But yeah, when you're looking back at his career, it's either 2020 or 2014 when you're trying to stack up his career match. I mean, I believe the Ziggler ladder match was in 2015 maybe. Yep. So maybe that's an outlier. But yeah, these 2 years were just premier years for Brodie Lee.
Yeah, for sure. And again, he certainly left a legacy. As we said, man, so many great memories. And as we're talking, like, and we're people that did not know him personally or professionally. Like, it's just incredible to think about the impact he's had on so many different people. But certainly he's had an impact on wrestling fans too, as you've seen from all the just heartfelt tributes and memories and everything. Just an incredible performer, and that was certainly the case here in this match at Elimination Chamber 2014 between the Wyatt family and the Shield. But Andy, it was great to kind of reflect on this. As we said, we're recording this before we actually do our Dissecting Dynamite, which we'll be doing, somewhat similar thoughts and reflections on Brodie Lee and just his career, and we'll be talking a lot about that show, AEW's tribute show that they're doing for him on Dynamite. So you'll be able to access that by the time you listen to this, and I will include it in the link there in the show notes. But anything else, Andy, but before we wrap up here, this retro review, as we said, we've certainly said a lot about the life of John Huber, Brodie Lee, Luke Harper, but man, just again, just a pretty incredible performer.
Yeah, an amazing performer. Like you said, if you guys would like to hear us speak more on Mr. Brodie Lee's career, we did an entire episode of Dissecting Dynamite, dedicated a tribute show to Brodie Lee. So go and find that on 411's YouTube. You can catch Dissecting Dynamite on 411's YouTube channel every other Wednesday. Right there on 411mania.com. So make sure you keep an eye out for it. We have some other good content coming on 411's YouTube channel here this month. We have a top 5 matches of 2020 list coming out in just a little bit, and then at the end of the month, closer to the Royal Rumble, we are going to have a little feature, a little mini doc on the history of the surprise Royal Rumble entrant. So make sure you guys keep a lookout for that as well.
Yeah, we'll put the link to everything on the YouTube channel in the show notes. And as Andy mentioned, Royal Rumble coming up here in January, as this will be released on January 1st. So, yeah, be sure to check out all of that. And we'll actually be dedicating a lot of these retro reviews here over the next several weeks to the Royal Rumble. And we'll look back at some random Royal Rumble shows. We may even get Andy back on as well. I know he's a big fan of the Rumble, as he said. So we'll be sure.
My favorite.
We'll be sure to get Andy back on for one of those here over the next several weeks. But, yeah, check all that stuff out on the 411 YouTube channel. check everything out over at 411mania.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Any podcast app you use, you can find us there. And if you enjoyed the show, leave a nice 5-star rating review. That just helps the show reach more people. And this is, as I kind of teased, sort of a revamped podcast here moving forward. We've got some ideas we're working with, and we're kind of putting out a new format. And, of course, we've already put out an episode earlier in the week looking at our Wrestle Kingdom 15 preview. But we have a lot of different stuff on the way, and we'll talk more about it here on future episodes here as we're kind of going through a new format here on the podcast. But be sure to check it out. And as usual, we will put the link to the GoFundMe for Larry Zonka's family in the show notes. That way you can continue to share it. We always appreciate that. And for everything else, you can follow things over at 411mania.com. And thanks as always for listening to this episode of the podcast. And we'll talk to you next time here on the 411 on Wrestling Podcast.